Friends, if Christ is risen, then nothing else matters. And if he is not, then nothing else matters. Pray be seated. Well, friends, happy Easter. You can do better than that. Happy Easter! We come to the third Sunday of these great 50 days, which are the climax of the church's life together, wherein we rehearse in sacred story and in the lifting of our hearts and voices to the worship of God. We declare with boldness Christ's victory over the grave, the triumph of love and truth over fear and hopelessness, the mystery of the redemption that was prepared for us from the foundations of the earth. The excerpt from this morning's gospel, excerpted from John, returns us to the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Galilee, the place where Jesus' ministry began. Galilee, where he called his disciples. Galilee, where he turned water into wine at the great wedding banquet in Cana, the first of his so-called signs. This 21st chapter of John, it functions as something of a postscript within the broader story. If we back up just 2 verses to chapter 20, we see exactly where the story could have ended. Thomas the apostle has placed his hand in the wounds of the risen Christ and declared, "My Lord and my God." And John goes on to say, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through believing, you may have life in his name. That would be a very good ending. But it's not the ending. It does hit all the right notes when it comes to the broader theological project that John has been about, a project that has been so concerned with signs and with seeing and truth in a world where the very possibility of such a thing is called into question. But nevertheless, the evangelist goes on to give us one more episode, just one more story. Because above all else, this is not the kind of story that can end in a place like Jerusalem. This is the kind of story that necessarily ends in the quotidian. It's the kind of story that ends in a place like Galilee. That's where the disciples found themselves that morning by the seashore. Back in the place where their story began and where their story intersected with Christ's. They're back in their homeland, the place where they labored as simple fisher folk before their lives were turned upside down. And here they are, back. I think we find something in that is quite familiar, primal even, that after trauma has wreaked its havoc in our lives, we grasp at those things which are most familiar to us, people, places, foods, activities, anything that we think of that might provide us with some sense of terra firma, the terra firma that we yearn for after the rug has been pulled out from underneath us. Turns out that there is a Samwise Gamgee in all of us, for those Tolkien fans out there. But in truth, no one could have prepared those disciples for the events that unfolded around them during their sojourn in the holy city. To watch the person that they loved the most die in such a brutalizing way. To to literally see the life drain from his limp body, and then to see him carted off to an Arimathean tomb. There's that. And then, oh yeah, 3 days later, the stone which had guarded the tomb was rolled away to reveal that it had been emptied. And the Gospels would have us believe that whatever it was that happened was nothing shy of a cosmic upheaval. On no less than 3 separate occasions, real, visceral, embodied experiences of the person they once knew. I may not understand it. You may not understand it. But the fact remains that something happened. Something happened, and it was powerful enough to change the course of history forever. So here they are, back where it all began. Back in Galilee, gone fishing. And it happens again. There he is, right in front of them. And it's starting to seem like this kind of thing might keep on happening. For your average run-of-the-mill disciple, that might be a very good news. For someone like Peter, on the other hand, we can imagine maybe a more mixed bag. It's complicated, right? Because there's a certain part of Peter's story that is unresolved thus far. There's a certain part of his story that still needs to be addressed. A certain part of his story, dare we say, in need of redemption. At present, there is a haze lingering over the sea, like an early morning fog, a haze of guilt and of shame. If you didn't quite pick up on that when we read the gospel a minute ago, take heart, because it's tucked away into the subtle details of the text. John is so good at symbols. It's that strange kind of throwaway little comment about Peter's nakedness and his covering himself in order to jump into the water. Pretty strange. But remember how John began his gospel? In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning. John begins with an allusion to the book of Genesis. In the beginning. And now, here at the very end of his gospel, we find him doing the exact same thing, taking us all the way back in sacred story to Genesis, reminding us of Adam in the Garden of Eden, covering his nakedness before the Lord, guilt and shame having taken hold of his life. Maybe that wasn't too obvious in the first reading. But what about that charcoal fire, right? That charcoal fire that's burning on the seashore. Now that little detail, that should send us right back to Holy Week. Right back to the scene of the crime. Should remind us of Peter's not so great moment. His threefold denial as he warmed his hands over a charcoal fire in the back alley in Jerusalem. It was just about the worst thing that one could do to one's friend. To deny them, to deny they ever knew them in their hour of desperate, dire need. And what does Jesus do on the seashore in Galilee. But extend to Peter the opportunity to make 3 affirmations of love. To cancel out the wrong that had been done. Not to ignore it, not to pretend that it had never happened, but to redeem it. To redeem it, to make the dead end into a starting point. Peter, the denier. Peter, the rock upon which Christ builds his church. So we see that from the very beginning of John's gospel, he has taken us from the cosmic, infinite, big picture of it all. And he has left us here at the end in the intimacy and nearness of an ordinary, broken believer's heart. And in laying it out for us in this way, he has taught us 2 things. First, that the creator of the universe, the ground of all being, who before all time was and who at the end of the age shall be, once upon a time deigned to tabernacle among us, to dwell with us. And when that happened, it looked like light shining in the darkness. And it looked like pure, perfect, overflowing love. And when we encountered that love, that pure, perfect, overflowing, overwhelming love, it scared the daylights out of us. We did everything we could to run from it, to push it away. We crucified it and we buried it in a tomb. But the love that once suspended the planets in their orbits, much too powerful, much too liberating, much too life-giving for anything like that. A light did shine in the darkness, and the darkness could not overcome it. Love was here to stay forever. And that's the second thing that John has taught us. That the resurrection was not a one-time sort of thing. It finds no constraint in time and space. It can never be bound exclusively to a historical moment, because in truth, it's something that is happening right now. Right now in the Galilees of our lives. It's what brought you here today. Jesus wants to Easter in us. To take those dead ends of our lives, the things that we are slaves to, powerless against, even death itself, to bring us back from the grave and to redeem it all. To redeem the broken bits and pieces, to blow away the chaff of guilt and shame and grief and sorrow and bitterness and despair and everything that gets in the way of us leading lives of flourishing. Jesus takes us by the hand and carries us into the perfect bliss of divine love and the wedding banquet of glory. The good news that we declare today, that whether we see it or not, it is happening. It is happening now. So on this day we say, Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia. Amen.